So if people have questions, would you please come up? So we have 7 minutes, and kindly identify yourself and ask a brief question. And if you want to point it to a particular presenter, that'll be a help. Okay. Okay. And I will try to alternate. And Aaron and Joseph, if you want to come up, it'll be easier. Okay. We have a couple of mics here, so. Okay. All right. Go ahead, please.
Shall I start?
Oh, he was. Oh, sorry. They were standing before. All right, please. Go ahead. Yes.
Hi, my name is
And your
JJ.
name, please. Yes.
I'm a mathematician. I just have a question a little bit more technical. So about the complete elimination of nuclear warheads. So what about the possibility of using it on like deflecting asteroids hitting Earth? What about that?
Oh.
That's Mac's question.
Are these the same warheads we use on
certainly
ourselves?
will be hit by an asteroid at some point. The question isn't if, but when. If the good news is that it's pretty easy to deal with. You just need to, and what you really need to do is just fund an early warning system, a cheap set of telescopes around the world connected to the internet that gives 50 years advanced warning or so. The bad news is we haven't been bothered doing that. It would cost about the same as the movie revenues from all Hollywood asteroid movies so far. Once you have the advanced warning, they can figure out exactly when it's going to strike, how Earth will be rotated at that time, and where it's going to strike. If you find it's going to land in Houston, then you do your fundraising in Houston for the deflection mission. And it's going to go really well. So that's why you only have to fund the search, not the. But you don't want to nuke it. Then instead of having one thing coming at you, you have 10,000 things coming at you. All you need to do if you have a lot of advanced warning is just nudge it a little bit, and they're much less violent techniques.
So quick follow-up question. Are these going to be the same warhead we use to nuke actual like silos?
No, we don't use nuclear weapons at all. You send the rocket, you land it on there, and actually because if you think about the relationship between momentum and energy, it's actually better to just take little pieces of stuff and throw it or push it away kind of slowly on a conveyor belt. That gives much more momentum for the energy spent. So the nuking them is just done for Hollywood effects.
Thank you. All right. Next one, please.
Hi, thank you all for your talks. I can imagine that someone new to the issue of nuclear disarmament might perceive a certain tension in the messaging of the various talks, which is that on the one hand, nuclear weapons seem to have been very unuseful in protecting ourselves from attacks, and on the other hand, there is this historical evidence that when it comes to our foreign policy and kind of the elite national interest, there does seem to have been a certain political component. So I think and I think there isn't necessarily a contradiction in that there, on the one hand you have the actual people at stake when it comes to our domestic interests, and when it comes to foreign policy, it's really only a couple of people that would benefit from this. But I think in terms of how we as a movement message these various arguments against nuclear weapons, how can we do that in a way that doesn't confuse people as to what our argument is? And maybe Joseph, you can go first, but I'm not sure if other people want to join.
Yeah. So I think what you see from that list that I have and from greater detail is that clearly in all of the cases where there's been these first strike preparations and threats, it hasn't necessarily led to the results that the U.S. presidents wanted. But in a number of cases they have. And so my sense is that as we move forward, we have to be on absolutely solid intellectual ground. And to say that it never works, I think, puts us in a weakened position as we're in public and policy arguments with those who will know the other side of history, where there are the cases where it has worked. I mean, take, for example, or perceived to have worked, take, for example, 1991, that threat. Basically, that threat was, as the United States was assembling its forces in Kuwait, the 500,000 troops for the invasion, basically the warning went to Saddam Hussein, don't attack us while we're vulnerable here because we're not set up yet, or we'll eliminate you. So, I mean, we're going to have to deal with those arguments. But a deeper level is why in the hell we were there in the first place.
I think, just to add something to this, I think it's wonderful that we air all these fine nuances and differences between ourselves when we're talking here, but when we talk to the much broader community, we should simply build the strongest possible alliance by keeping it very simple. And it's, there's no if you have a very strong argument, the best thing to do is to understate it a little bit, so you're less vulnerable to being criticized. I think we can all agree that okay, even if you want great nuclear deterrence, you don't need 7,000. You don't need 2,000 either. So step one, let's reduce our nuclear arsenals a little bit. Let's not spend $1 trillion upgrading them. In just one sentence, let's not spend more money making ourselves less safe. That's what I would suggest we all say with one voice to people who haven't thought about this very much.
I just add one thing is that I think that the struggle in terms of getting down nuclear weapons to a very low number or eventually eliminating them, this struggle must be a part of the 99% versus the 1%. I think when we're able to make the connections against the environmental damage, against all the money that's being spent on things that shouldn't be spending on, I think people will resonate, like the subway man in the talk about nuclear submarines or MBTA. So.
Can I just, sorry, for 10 seconds, add a personal comment?
Sorry, we have two more people. Okay, just quick.
Yeah, so I think it's just important from the perspective of, what Elaine was saying earlier, the component of race and who's targeted. That it's important, like Joseph said, to be nuanced. But I agree with all of you about what you said. Thanks.
Thank you.
There's
Please.
a panel
sorry.
this afternoon. Do I have to press? There's a panel this afternoon for those of you who want more of an introduction.
That's right. Alan, okay, please, yeah.
So my question is concerning the basically quality.
You're an MIT student?
No, I'm a student at BU.
Great.
So recently there was a cheating scandal at Malmstrom, and there was a drug scandal there as well among the officer corps, where people, because you need 100%, or like 98% percentage on the test that you use to qualify, and that these officers have to keep retaking, they just cheated. They just texted one another the answers. And so my question is really, assuming that we remain on hair trigger alert, how do we move forward with the human aspect of this? Do we, write a program that basically says, well, if we're 99% confident that it's a nuclear strike, we'll send it right to the president to keep the people, the officers in charge, despite the sort of less glamorous lifestyle that they have and the cheating that might go along with it?
So between Elizabeth and Aaron, whoever wants to go on that. Elizabeth hasn't had a chance.
So you're asking whether we should get those people out of the loop?
Yeah,
They're not in the loop in terms of assessing an incoming attack. They're at the other end where they would turn the keys that would launch the.
But in terms of morale, so it's, as we move towards, what do we do about those people? Do we let them keep the keys? Are we going to let people who are having drug scandals and basically cheating on their exams to be qualified for this? Do we get them out? Do we just replace them, or do we have a change in the status quo?
Well, I think for starters, you take those missiles off alert, so it's not a problem.
Okay. Thank you for your question. Unfortunately, we are out of time.